Hello, hello, hello. Howdy, hi, beautiful human. Merry Christmas Eve, Happy Festivus, and all the rest of it. I couldn't see what my camera could see until right now. I'm just going to roll that out, even though it's silly, messy in here. Just one last thing that I get to stare at. Once again, I'm showing up raw and real and unedited to share my experience as I go through my shadow mandala project. Today is day 4 of my 10-day end of year Ride It Out 2025 reset, and it is day 3 working on my shadow mandala. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's come up for me, how the experience has been. Really finding the mandala to be a perfect vehicle for doing the shadow work. So I'm stoked to be creating a container for that and trying it out and sharing it with you. The question that I used for a prompt today, let's get into my little sketchbook here so I can follow along with myself. So what I did for the mandala project was choose 8 archetypes that are resonant with me. There are many, many, many. And then I put each one, first I did them in a 9 segment circle-ish, mostly a circle. But then that took me a long time to figure out how to do, and because I'm creating this book, I shifted that over to an 8 segment circle with a center. So it's still 9 archetypes that I'm exploring. And the center is the core or the hero, which is matches the framework that I'm using. But as I'm explaining in the book that I'm about to publish, the archetype should be whatever resonates for you. There are many ways, like it might be that you could do 12 months with the year in the middle, or family members and something that you're working on. There's really no limit to the ways that this framework could work to work through things in the subconscious. That's really, pardon me, something that the mandala lends itself to very well, is working on getting at the subconscious, because the subconscious, as I mentioned yesterday, deals mostly in symbols, pictures, stories, feelings, more than words and logic. So a mandala is a great way to compartmentalize, to explore, and like to invite the subconscious to correspond, both to like to speak to the subconscious and to listen to the subconscious by way of pen, paper, or pencil, and hand. So I did, the first day was mask or two-face, 200, and the second day was, that was yesterday, the victim. And today I'm doing the judge or the critic. And I haven't had a chance to work on this one today. I did work on this other one a little bit this morning. And the questions I've put, so this up-leveled one, I'm trying to get it to where it will focus, has a question for each segment that is helping me focus. And today's question is, what am I judging in others and why? And this is a question I actually ask myself fairly often, because I catch myself being judgmental fairly often. And, you know, I'm judgmental about being judgmental, for example. And I think it's easy to, it feels better to project that judgment onto others and think, why, how could they do that? Or why are they doing that? And I'm hesitant there because it doesn't actually feel good now that I'm thinking about it. Like maybe the brain thinks it feels good. It's one of those sort of complex feelings where maybe it's intense, but actually relatively unpleasant. Again, I'm just thinking about this in real time, because after I worked on this framework yesterday some, and did a really delightful podcast episode about shadow work in general. Then a friend of mine came over, and I found myself going through a very familiar pattern loop of being judgmental, of projecting my own like insecurities and resentments and desires really onto her in the form of judgment and resentment and envy. It was not rational, but I had to get past the emotional part, and thankfully the work I've been doing in this project in particular did help me get past that emotional part, or being like submerged in the emotional dysregulation part, so that then I could start to untangle and I used some journaling, I used some pictures, and I just really did some self-reflecting on why I feel so envious and resentful and judgmental. Really, so the judgment comes from envy, I think, in this particular case. I want to say or point out that the point of this work is that it's very individual. So even though there are very common patterns that show up again and again and again, if you work with other people or even with yourself, you start to see that. And also every iteration is very individual in each individuals and in each individual and in ourselves as we go through iterations of what might seem like the same work. It might appear a little bit different, feel a little bit different. We get a little bit different, epiphanies or sense of growth from different iterations. So this work of looking at why I'm judging someone and how that is reflecting on what I'm denying in myself is work that I have done many, many iterations of. And so it's sort of, on the one hand, doesn't surprise me anymore when it sneaks up on me. And on the other hand, it still continues to sort of surprise or shock me how intensely I can catch myself feeling that resentment or let me unpack where I think I have gotten to with some of it. Having this fresh iteration of it just last night was that I was feeling envious, and the initial response in my body was just one of I think I started screaming "fuck off" uncontrollably. That was pretty much summed it up. I was just like, I was grappling internally with feeling envious and trying to feel happy for my dear friend who I do love and I'm happy for. But there was also an aspect of how she was telling it to me that I was judging internally as being not fully honest. And that's totally a projection on my part. I may or may not be true on her part, but the reason I think that way or feel that way is because I have been not fully honest with myself on many occasions, and especially when I'm submerged in the type of relationship that she was sharing some of with me. So, I mean, like, I can clearly see that I was projecting my own experiences, my own wounds, my own expectations, my own past experiences onto her stories and being judgmental of them as a way to, like, instead of just, so in a way it was being judgmental of myself, but I was projecting that judgment onto her and feeling a sense of like disgust, I guess would be one word for it. But I was grappling internally between wanting to feel happy for her and managing to say things like, I'm really happy for you. But I can look back and see that like that was a forced statement. I wasn't really feeling it. And by the time she left, literally after she got out the door, she said one last thing. It was like that straw that broke the camel's back. And I started screaming, "Fuck off." And it would have been one thing if I would have just said "fuck off" in response to what she said. But I then repeated it and got louder as she went to her car. And, we're still friends, I think, because we've been friends for 30 plus years. She's like a sister to me very much. And so we've both felt like screaming fuck off to each other a number of times and have a number of times. So I am grateful that I have her in my life to bring things up for me to work on, and that she and I have been through a lot of iterations of push and pull to where, I'm not worried about that part, although I was aware that that was really rude of me and misaligned with what I had just been saying to her, and very much a demonstration of this very shadow work that I've been doing, and this very question about what am I judging in others and why. And so the why I was judging her was that I'm feeling very insecure, and I'm feeling left out, and I'm feeling unloved and unlovable. She was looking very beautiful, and she's having a very good time since her birthday and things. After going through a really dark period, she's having a lot of positives in her life, which I am genuinely happy for. And it was like striking a chord in me of things that I still have not fully developed and cultivated in my own life. And I've been doing a lot of healing myself. And there are things that I have cultivated in my life. And I know, because of her and I's relationship, there are things I have that she's envious of, and there are things that she has that I'm envious of. And she and I are similar in a lot of ways, and we're also different in a lot of ways, like sister friends often are, such that it intensifies that comparison that we tend to do. Other people compare us, we compare ourselves, and all of that is to say that, like, the work of processing this kind of emotion, as messy as it is, and here I am sharing the real-time messiness of it, really has to do with what I'm sharing right now, which is looking at things from different perspectives, bringing them out into the light, holding truths, like digging them out of the shadows and bring them into the light. And then again, not to judge them, not to put myself down, not to think like, oh, what a crappy friend or what a crappy human being I am. No, because we all do this sort of thing. And I am just as fallible as most humans. Probably you are fallible too. We have our little nuances, our differences, our distinctions, which is one of my favorite things ever in life. And also, most of us do do this kind of projection thing, this sort of judging people for things that we're denying in ourselves, this two-faced, like diminishing our shine to respond to other people's perspectives, this feeling sorry for ourselves and using that as a reason to get things. And that brings me to an important point that I guess I have to mention now that it just came to my consciousness in this work, which is that yesterday I was on this victim, how am I playing the victim section of my mandala work, shadow mandala, and I was, starting to prepare for today's, what am I judging and why? And when I had that interaction with my dear friend, it revealed to me a lot of work that I still have to do, a lot of work that I have done. It was both and, because there were different points in our relationship where that outburst in me would have then kept going and probably escalated, and it might have escalated in her as well, and we probably would have both cried. There might have been fighting. There's been times in our life where we've been estranged, but instead, even though I did raise my voice uncontrollably for a short time, like less than a minute probably, then I would, and then it took me probably, I don't know, an hour to get my neurochemistry back to a more stabilized state where I was able to really think through it more rationally. But even so, pretty much right away within, a minute, I knew that it was something that I wanted to aim toward de-escalating instead of something that I was going to sit there and escalate, which is a real shift if I look at it in the long game perspective in some of my past behavior. So it's patting myself on the back for that. And the way that I judged her, blamed her in my mind, not out loud, for profiting, it seemed like profiting from being the victim, was very much resonant with the work I had just been doing. And even though, like, it was a great lesson for me to show me that I might, even though I have done work and I might like to think I've accomplished, air quotes, accomplished, like finished the work, there really isn't finishing the work. As I was getting at earlier with iterations, and I have this sense a lot. It's a lot like peeling an onion. Like there's always another layer under there, or layering onto an onion, depending on which direction you want to look at it. But I like the spiral symbol for lots of reasons. It just looks good, but it also is representative of exactly what I'm talking about, which is that I and we and life itself, it seems to me, tend to cycle through very similar things. As I've heard it said, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And so, just like the spiral symbol, the circles aren't in the exact same place, but they're following a very similar pattern, and they're expanding or, again, contracting, depending on which direction you're following the spiral. But I think this shadow work is very much the same thing. So just as I had done an up-leveling of my work on victim mentality and playing the victim in order to get things in life, like asking the question, what am I getting from playing the victim? Then I was confronted immediately with the second question that I set out and invited myself into, which is, how am I judging and why? One of my biggest judgments has to do with that exact thing, thinking that I'm not playing the victim and then judging other people for doing that, when really, like, that very act is a story of victimhood. Like, poor me. I don't even get any sympathy for my suffering. Like there's this very old, just really silly story going on in there that I'm bringing into the light again during this shadow work session in order to examine it, in order to talk about it openly and honestly, so that as I move through the next iterations, I will have a better chance of catching myself a little bit sooner. I will have a better chance of using better words, of, broadening my perspective differently, again, sooner, before I sit here and just let myself spiral into that place of judgment and victim mentality where I wound up then screaming at my good friend. I could do a better job of in that particular case, and I think in many cases it has to do probably with holding boundaries better. So there was a point early in the conversation where I probably should have said, hey, I need to get back to my work. I love you and I'm really happy for you, and I will talk to you soon, and giving her a hug instead of trying to hold that space and becoming resentful and then starting to become judgmental in my own head and winding up exploding a little bit. Again, I'm sharing all this because I think it's very common, because it's work that I am actually excited to be capable of doing now that I'm doing it. And I've been through a lot of iterations, as I mentioned. So it's not my first rodeo in doing this work, but it is it is this iteration. So each one is a little bit different from the last. And tomorrow's question is, how am I acting the fool and why? And just to give you a little run through of my 8 sections that I have put now on my shadow mandala. So day 1 was the mask. The question was, what's my two-face, 200, not 2 like the number 2. And then day 2 was, how am I playing the victim? Like, poor me, might as well go eat some worms. Day 3, that's today, even though it's day 4 of my reset. I set this up the first day. So question number 3, the judge archetype. What am I judging in others and why? And day 4, tomorrow, that's going to be the fool, as I mentioned. How am I playing the fool and why? Day 5 is going to be how the outcast. How have I exiled myself? 6 is elder or wisdom. In what ways do I disrespect myself and others and life itself? And next is, where am I spiritually bypassing? I think that's the archetype of the mystic or the sage. I haven't filled these out completely yet. So as you can see, it's mostly blank in there. So we'll see how it gets filled out. But the last one, before the center one with the hero, is my chaos aligned? Let's see if I can see what I wrote for that. That's I changed these up, so that does me no good. Anyway, I'll be sharing more about that framework as I go through it. And I'm really excited that I have created a booklet for others, and I'll be publishing that on Amazon just for a place to park it. But if you are listening to this and you would like a free digital copy of that, I would be happy to send it to you. I just need your email to do that. And in that booklet, I am explaining a little bit more about mandalas, a little bit more about shadow work, and why the two are really great match. And then I give you, I lay out the framework that I'm using here, give some examples, list some other example archetypes for anybody that's interested, some example questions, and invite you to make it your own. So I think it's a great project. I'm having fun going through it. Fun, if you know, fun with air quotes, as in some of it's fun, some of it's painful, but I do feel like it's very valuable and aligned for where I am right now and the work I'm doing. And I am looking forward to guiding other people to go through this process in 2026. I have lots of great stuff going on in 2026 that I'm excited about. That said, I'm going to get to some of it. So I welcome any questions, any comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Be good to yourself. It's Christmas Eve today, and I don't have any lights up, but I might get a little bit of celebrating. And I am enjoying a very peaceful day with my dog friends. It's been nice. I hope you are enjoying something nice, whatever that is. And yeah, I'm going to go have some hot tea now that I said that. Ciao for now.